The window behind me exploded inward before I even opened my eyes. Glass sprayed across my chest like cold rain, and my body reacted before my brain caught up. I rolled off the bed and hit the floor hard, heart slamming against my ribs. Smoke curled through the broken frame. Somewhere outside, an alarm was screaming, but it wasn't a car alarm. It was something deeper, something that didn't belong to any siren I had ever heard in my life. My name is Daniel Hart. I fix engines for a living. Nothing more, nothing less. I go to work. I come home. I sleep. I repeat. That was my whole life until that night. That was the last normal night I would ever have. I pushed myself up on shaking arms and looked at my bed, and that was when I saw her. A woman lay across my sheets, her skin glowing faintly, like moonlight trapped under her surface. Her hair was silver, not gray, not white, but silver, the kind of color that didn't exist naturally on anyone I had ever met. Her clothes looked like liquid metal poured over her body, shifting slightly even though she wasn't moving. She was breathing, but barely, and there was a thin line of blood at her temple. I didn't scream. I want to be honest about that. I just stood there, frozen, staring at a woman who looked like she had fallen out of a dream and landed in my apartment. Then her eyes opened. They were not human eyes. They were a deep violet, glowing faintly from within, like two small stars trying to stay lit. She looked at me, and for a moment neither of us moved. Then she sat up so fast, I stumbled back into my dresser. "Where am I?" she said. Her voice had a strange echo to it, like two voices speaking at once, slightly out of time with each other. "You're in my apartment," I said, because that was the only true thing I could think to say. "You fell through my window. Are you hurt?" She touched the blood at her temple and looked at her fingers like she didn't understand what blood was. Then she looked at me again, sharper this time, studying me the way you'd study a wild animal that might attack. "You are not one of them," she said quietly. "One of who?" Before she could answer, something outside let out a sound like metal tearing apart, followed by a flash of blue light that lit up my whole bedroom for half a second. She flinched, and for the first time, I saw real fear in those glowing eyes. "They found me," she whispered. "Who found you? What is going on?" She grabbed my arm, and her grip was strong, stronger than it had any right to be for someone her size. "Listen to me. My name is Velthara. I am the ruler of a place you cannot imagine, and there are people trying to kill me right now, tonight, in this city. If you help me, you may not live to regret it, but if you do not help me, I promise you that I will not live at all." I should have laughed. I should have called this a fever dream, or a very elaborate prank, or the beginning of a mental breakdown. Instead, I looked into her eyes, and something inside me, some instinct older than logic, told me she was telling the truth. "Okay," I said, and my voice came out steadier than I felt. "Okay, what do we do?" Another explosion rocked the building, closer this time. Car alarms went off up and down the street. I heard shouting outside, panicked voices, and under all of it, a low humming sound that didn't belong to anything human. "We need to leave," Velthara said, pulling herself off the bed. She swayed on her feet, clearly weaker than she wanted to admit. "My ship crashed somewhere nearby. If they trace its signal before I can reach it, everything is lost." "Your ship," I repeated, because apparently my brain needed to hear that phrase out loud to accept it. "Yes, a ship, from the sky. Please, there is no time to explain everything now." I grabbed a jacket off my chair, more out of habit than anything else, and helped her stand. She leaned into me, and I felt how cold her skin was, unnaturally cold, like she had just stepped out of a freezer. "Why are they trying to kill you?" I asked as we moved toward my door. "Because I showed mercy to someone who did not deserve it, and where I come from, mercy is considered a disease," she said. "My own council decided I was unfit to rule because of it. They tried to erase me quietly, but I escaped, and now they have followed me here to finish what they started." I didn't fully understand what she meant, not yet, but I understood enough. Someone wanted her dead, and they were close enough that I could hear their footsteps on the street below. We slipped out through my back door instead of the front, moving through the narrow alley behind my building. The night air smelled like burning metal and ash. Down at the end of the alley, I could see flashing blue light pulsing against the brick walls, like something out there was scanning the area, searching. "They can sense my energy signature," Velthara whispered, pressing herself against the wall. "The longer I stay near you, the more danger you are in as well." "Little late to worry about that now," I whispered back, and for a strange half-second, I thought I saw the corner of her mouth twitch, almost like she wanted to smile. We moved fast, cutting through backyards and hopping a low fence into the next street over. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, but somehow my hands were steady. I don't know where that calm came from. Maybe it was shock, maybe it was something else. We ducked behind a parked truck as a shape passed overhead, silent, sleek, shaped like nothing built on Earth. It hovered for a moment, scanning the street with a thin blue beam of light, then moved on toward my apartment building. "That thing is looking for you," I said. "It is looking for both of us now," she said. "The moment you touched me, the moment you helped me stand, you became part of this." I should have been angry. Instead, I felt something strange settle over me, something close to purpose. My whole life had been small, quiet, unremarkable. And now, in the middle of the night, a woman who ruled something bigger than my entire planet was standing beside me, trusting me to keep her alive. "Where's your ship?" I asked. "Somewhere in the industrial district, if my memory of the crash is accurate. But I do not know if I can walk that far in this condition." "Then we don't walk. I know a shortcut, and I know someone who owes me a favor. Come on." We moved through the shadows, staying off the main streets, avoiding the pulsing blue lights that swept over rooftops every few minutes. Velthara grew quieter with each block, her breathing shallow, her steps slower. I realized she was hurt worse than she let on. "Talk to me," I said, trying to keep her focused. "Tell me something. Anything. Who are these people hunting you?" "They call themselves the Silent Council," she said between breaths. "They believe an empire should be run without feeling, without hesitation, without weakness. They believe compassion makes a ruler soft, and softness gets people killed. I was taught the same thing my entire life, until one day I chose differently, and they decided that choice made me dangerous." "What did you do?" "I spared a prisoner who should have been executed, because I believed there was still good in him. It turned out I was wrong about him, but I was right about one thing. A ruler who cannot feel is not strong. She is simply empty. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just kept walking, kept her moving, kept both of us alive one step at a time." We reached the old auto shop where I worked, dark and quiet at this hour, the metal shutters pulled down tight. I banged on the side door until a groggy voice answered from inside. "Daniel, it's the middle of the night, man. What is wrong with you?" "Nathan, open up, please. I need help, and I don't have time to explain." The door creaked open, and my coworker Nathan Cole stood there in a wrinkled shirt, blinking at me, then blinking at the strange glowing woman leaning on my shoulder. His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. "Who is that?" he finally managed. "Long story. Can we come in or not?" He stepped aside without another word, and we slipped into the dark garage, the smell of oil and rubber suddenly comforting in a way it had never been before. Velthara sank onto an old bench, her breathing ragged now, her glow dimming slightly, like a light bulb running low on power. "She's really hurt," I said, kneeling beside her. "She's really something," Nathan muttered, staring at the faint light coming off her skin. "Daniel, what did you get yourself into?" Outside, in the distance, I heard that same tearing metal sound again, closer this time, and the blue light swept once more across the sky. "I think," I said slowly, watching Velthara's violet eyes struggle to stay open, "I got myself into something a lot bigger than either of us understands yet." She looked up at me then, and despite the pain, despite the fear, there was something steady in her gaze, something that looked almost like hope. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not running." I didn't answer right away. I just sat there beside her, in a garage that smelled like grease and fear, listening to something inhuman search the streets outside for the woman resting against my shoulder, and I realized there was no version of tonight where I walked away from this untouched. Whatever came next, I was already in it. Nathan locked the garage door twice, which told me exactly how scared he was, because Nathan never locked anything twice. He kept glancing at Velthara like she might vanish or explode, and honestly, I couldn't blame him. I felt the same way. "She needs to rest," I said, grabbing an old blanket from the supply shelf and wrapping it around her shoulders. Her skin was still cold, but the glow beneath it had steadied, no longer flickering like it had in the alley. "Daniel," Nathan said carefully, "there was something flying over the street outside. I saw it through the window before you knocked. It wasn't a drone, it wasn't a helicopter, it didn't have wings." "I know." "You know? How do you know? What is happening right now?" Velthara answered before I could. "What you saw was a hunting craft, built to track energy signatures across a planet's surface. It belongs to soldiers sent to kill me. I am sorry to bring this danger into your place of work." Nathan stared at her, then at me, then back at her again. "She talks like that all the time?" "Apparently," I said. For the next hour, we stayed hidden in the back office of the garage, lights off, blinds shut, listening to distant sounds moving across the neighborhood. Sirens. Shouting. Once, a low humming noise that passed directly overhead and made every tool on the wall rattle. Velthara sat very still during that one, her eyes closed, her lips barely moving, like she was counting seconds until it passed. When it finally faded, she opened her eyes and let out a slow breath. "They are widening their search pattern. That means they lost my trail for now, but it will not last. How long do we have? Hours, perhaps. Not days." I rubbed my face, trying to process everything. A few hours ago, my biggest problem was a broken alternator I needed to fix before noon. Now I was hiding an alien Empress from assassins with technology that could tear through steel like paper. "Okay," I said, sitting down across from her. "You said your ship crashed somewhere in the industrial district. If we can get to it, can you fix it? Can you leave?" "Possibly. The vessel has a self-repair system, but it requires time and a stable power source to activate fully. Without that, I am stranded here, vulnerable, and so is anyone who helps me." "Then we get you a stable power source," I said, like that was a simple thing to say out loud. She studied me for a long moment, tilting her head slightly, the way someone studies a puzzle they don't fully understand yet. "You keep saying we," she said, "as though my problem has become your problem." "It kind of has. Why? You do not know me. You owe me nothing. On my world, no one would risk their life for a stranger, not even for their own family, unless there was clear benefit in doing so." I thought about that for a second, about how strange it must be for her, growing up somewhere that treated kindness like a flaw instead of a strength. "Where I'm from," I said, "helping someone doesn't need a reason. Someone falls, you help them up. Someone's scared, you sit with them. That's just what people do." "That seems inefficient," she said, but there was something softer in her voice now, something curious instead of dismissive. "Maybe, but it also means nobody has to face the bad stuff alone." She looked down at her hands, turning them over slowly, like she was noticing them for the first time. "On my world, I have never once faced anything alone, by choice. I have always been surrounded by advisors, soldiers, servants. Yet somehow, I have never felt less alone than I do right now, sitting in this small room with strangers who owe me nothing." Nathan cleared his throat awkwardly from the corner, clearly uncomfortable with how personal the conversation had gotten. "So, are we just supposed to hide here forever, or is there an actual plan?" "There's a plan," I said, standing up. "We find her ship before sunrise, get her fixed up, and get her off this planet before whoever is hunting her tears apart half the city looking for us." "That's not a plan, Daniel. That's a risky mission with extra steps." "You got a better idea?" He didn't. We waited until the streets grew quiet again, then slipped back out into the night, moving carefully along the edges of buildings, avoiding streetlights. Velthara moved slower than before, leaning on me more heavily, though she tried to hide it. Every few minutes, she would pause, close her eyes, and seem to listen to something none of us could hear. "They're circling wider," she said at one point. "That is good. It means they believe I have moved further away." "How do you even sense that?" A trained mind can feel disruptions in tracking energy, the same way you might feel a change in air pressure before a storm. We reached the edge of the industrial district just as the sky began to lighten slightly at the horizon, gray creeping in at the edges of the dark. Rows of warehouses stood silent around us, metal roofs glinting faintly. Somewhere among them, according to Velthara, her ship had crashed. "There," she said suddenly, pointing toward a collapsed section of fencing near an old storage yard. Smoke still rose faintly from behind a stack of shipping containers. We moved closer, careful, quiet, until we saw it, a shape half buried in torn earth, sleek and dark, its surface covered in strange markings that shimmered faintly even in the dim light. It looked smaller than I expected, barely the size of a delivery van, but something about it radiated power, even wounded and broken as it was. Velthara let out a breath that sounded almost like relief. It survived the crash. She approached the ship and pressed her palm against its surface. A soft blue light pulsed outward from her hand, spreading across the hull like ripples in water. A section of the ship's side split open silently, revealing a dim interior filled with strange curved seats and glowing panels. "Can you fix it?" I asked. "Not alone, not quickly. The core stabilizer is damaged. I need an external power source strong enough to trigger the repair sequence, and a location safe enough to remain undetected while it runs." "How long would that take?" "Several hours, at minimum." Nathan groaned quietly beside me. "Several hours. Out here, while alien hunters are searching for her. Wonderful. Love this for us." Velthara turned to look at him, her expression unreadable for a moment, then oddly gentle. "You are afraid, and yet you have not left. Why?" Nathan shrugged, looking embarrassed. "Because Daniel's my friend, and apparently that means his weird alien problems are now my weird alien problems too." Something flickered across her face, something close to genuine surprise, maybe even something close to being moved. "Loyalty without obligation," she murmured. "I am beginning to understand why your species survives despite lacking our technology." We spent the next stretch of time working together, dragging cables from a nearby maintenance shed, connecting them to the ship's damaged core under Velthara's careful instructions. My hands, so used to fixing engines and busted alternators, somehow adjusted to this strange new kind of machinery faster than I expected. It wasn't so different in the end. Broken was broken. Fixing things was fixing things, whether the parts came from a factory down the road or from the stars. As the ship's systems slowly hummed back to life, faint lights blinking along its surface, Velthara sat back against a container, exhausted but steady. I noticed something odd then, a strange tingling warmth spreading through my fingertips where I had touched parts of her ship, parts that still carried traces of her energy field. "Are you feeling strange?" she asked suddenly, watching me flex my hand. "A little. Why?" "Extended exposure to my ship's stabilizing field can sometimes affect biological systems. It should fade, or it may not. I am not entirely certain how your body will respond." "That's reassuring," I muttered, though honestly, I felt more alert than I had in years, my senses sharper, the tiredness in my body somehow lighter than it should have been after a night like this. Before she could explain further, a distant humming sound rolled across the industrial yard, low and steady, growing louder with each passing second. Velthara's head snapped up immediately, her calm shattering. "They found the wreck site," she said, voice tight. "We need to move, now. The ship isn't ready yet." "I know." We scrambled to disconnect what we could, Nathan grabbing loose cables while I helped Velthara to her feet. The humming grew louder, and through gaps in the containers, I saw a shape descending from the graying sky, sleek and silent, its surface reflecting the first light of dawn like polished stone. "Get behind the containers," Velthara whispered urgently. We ducked low, hearts pounding, watching as the craft settled onto the cracked pavement not far from her wounded ship. A hatch slid open, and figures stepped out, tall, armored, moving with unnatural precision, scanning the area with quick, mechanical efficiency. "Those are her hunters," I whispered to Nathan, who looked like he might be sick. "Great," he whispered back. "Just great." Velthara's hand tightened around my arm, her violet eyes locked on the approaching figures, and for the first time since I had met her, I saw something besides fear in her expression. I saw calculation. I saw the beginning of a plan forming behind those glowing eyes, and somehow that steadied me more than it scared me. "Daniel," she whispered, "whatever happens next, do not try to fight them directly. Their armor is built to withstand exactly that kind of resistance." "Then what do we do?" She looked at me, at the scattered tools and scrap metal around the storage yard, at the improvised cables still trailing from her ship, and a strange, thin smile crossed her lips. "We use the one thing their training never accounted for," she said quietly. "Unpredictability." The soldiers moved through the storage yard in a tight formation, their armor catching the pale morning light in dull gray flashes. They didn't call out warnings or demands. They simply searched, methodical and silent, sweeping handheld devices across crates and containers, closing the distance toward us step by careful step. "There are 4 of them," Velthara whispered. "Each one carries a suppression weapon designed to disable my biological functions instantly. We cannot allow them to get within range. And if they do, then this conversation becomes irrelevant." Nathan grabbed my sleeve, his eyes wide. "Daniel, I fix cars. I did not sign up for this." "Neither did I whispered back, "but we're already in it." I looked around the yard, my mind racing through everything scattered across the space. Old fuel drums, loose chains, a rusted forklift missing half its parts, coils of thick industrial cable. None of it was a weapon, all of it somehow could become one. "Velthara," I whispered, "how sensitive are their scanners to electrical interference?" She turned to me sharply. "Very sensitive." "Why?" "Because I think I know how to buy us some time." I grabbed a length of loose cable still connected to a portable generator near the maintenance shed, the same one we'd used to power part of her ship's repair sequence. If I overloaded it fast enough, it might throw off a burst of energy large enough to scramble their scanners, at least for a few seconds. "Nathan, when I say run, you run toward the ship, no matter what you hear behind you. That is the least comforting sentence anyone has ever said to me. Just trust me." I crossed the wires quickly, feeling the tingling warmth in my fingertips again, sharper now, almost electric. The moment the connection sparked, a burst of blue static rippled outward across the yard, crackling over metal surfaces, and every scanning device in the soldier's hands let out a harsh, distorted whine. "Now," I shouted. We broke from cover and ran, Velthara moving faster than I expected despite her exhaustion, Nathan sprinting ahead of us toward the ship. Behind us, I heard sharp commands barked in a language I didn't understand, followed by the low hum of weapons charging. A beam of white light sliced past my shoulder, striking a stack of crates and turning them instantly to ash. My heart nearly stopped, but my legs kept moving on pure instinct. "Keep moving," Velthara shouted, grabbing my arm and yanking me sideways, just as another beam scorched the ground where I had been standing half a second earlier. We reached the ship's open hatch, Nathan already inside, breathless, pressed against the curved wall. Velthara practically threw herself through the opening, then turned, reaching a hand back out toward me. "Daniel, hurry." I felt something clip my side, not a direct hit, but close enough to send a jolt of pain through my ribs, knocking the air from my lungs. I stumbled, caught myself, and dove through the hatch just as it began sliding shut behind me. "Seal it," Velthara called out, and the ship responded to her voice. the hatch closing with a soft hiss, muting the chaos outside instantly. For a moment, all three of us just lay there, breathing hard, hearts pounding, listening to muffled impacts against the ship's hull from outside. "Is everyone all right?" Velthara asked, scrambling toward me, her hands hovering over the spot on my side where pain still throbbed. "I'm fine," I said, though the wince on my face probably said otherwise, "just grazed." She pressed her palm gently against my side, and a faint warmth spread from her touch, easing the sharp edges of the pain almost instantly. I looked at her, startled. "A basic stabilizing pulse," she explained quietly. "It will not heal you fully, but it will help until we can address it properly." "Thanks," I managed, still catching my breath. Outside, the pounding against the hull continued, growing more forceful, more determined. "They know we're inside," Nathan said, voice tight with panic. "What happens now?" Velthara moved toward the ship's central console, her fingers dancing across glowing symbols I couldn't begin to understand. The repair sequence was incomplete. The ship can move, but only briefly, and only a short distance, before the core destabilizes again. "How short is short?" I asked. "Enough to escape this location, not enough to leave the planet's surface." "Then we run again," I said. "We just need somewhere safe enough to finish repairs without them finding us immediately." She looked at me, something calculating behind her eyes again. "There is another option, though it is unconventional." At this point, unconventional sounds like our best friend. "We do not run from them," she said slowly. "We let them believe they have found us, then use their own confidence against them." Nathan groaned from the corner. "Why do I feel like that plan involves me almost dying again?" "Because it likely does," Velthara said, with a calmness that somehow made the statement worse. She explained quickly, her voice steady, despite the pounding against the hull growing louder outside. The ship still carried a defensive pulse system, weak now, barely functional, but enough to create a short, disorienting shockwave if timed correctly. Combined with the ship's sudden lift and a burst of speed, it could throw off their pursuit long enough for us to disappear into the nearby maze of warehouses. "It's risky," she admitted, "but predictable movement is what gets hunted, things killed. We need to become something they cannot predict." I thought about Nathan's earlier words, about how none of this made sense to someone raised in a world built on cold calculation and rigid control. Velthara's people valued precision above everything else. Maybe that was exactly why chaos, real, human, unpredictable chaos, was the one thing they had never learned to counter. "Do it," I said. She nodded, fingers moving swiftly across the console. The ship shuddered beneath us, lights flickering, and then, with a sudden lurch, it lifted off the ground just enough to clear the earth beneath it. A pulse of energy rippled outward from the hull, and through a small viewport, I saw the armored soldiers stumble backward, their weapons flickering and dying in their hands. The ship shot forward, weaving unsteadily between stacked containers, barely avoiding a direct collision with a warehouse wall, before settling low behind a cluster of large storage tanks several hundred yards away. The moment it touched down, all its lights dimmed sharply, and a tired mechanical groan echoed through the hull. "Core is unstable," Velthara said, breathing hard. "We cannot move again for some time." "But we got away," Nathan said, disbelief coloring his voice. "We actually got away." "For now," she said. "They will regroup and search again soon. This bought us minutes, not safety." I sat back against the curved wall, my side still aching despite her earlier touch, my mind racing through everything that had just happened. A few hours ago, I was an ordinary man asleep in his own bed. Now I was hiding inside an alien ship, having just escaped soldiers with weapons that turned solid crates into ash. "Velthara," I said quietly, "back there, you said mercy was seen as weakness where you're from, but just now, you didn't hesitate to protect us, to protect me. Why?" She was quiet for a long moment, her violet eyes studying the dim console lights instead of meeting mine. "Because somewhere between crashing through your window And standing in that storage yard, she said slowly, I began to understand something my own people never taught me. Protecting others is not the opposite of strength. It may, in fact, be the truest form of it. The words hung in the air between us, heavier than either of us seemed ready to fully unpack. Outside, distant shouting echoed faintly through the metal walls, followed by the low hum of the hunting craft moving further away, searching elsewhere for now. We're not out of danger, I said quietly. No, she agreed, but for the first time since this began, I believe we have a real chance. Nathan let out a shaky breath, leaning his head back against the wall. Can we maybe not do that again anytime soon? Neither Velthara nor I answered him, because deep down, all three of us already knew the truth. Whatever came next, hiding was no longer an option. If we wanted her to survive this, we would eventually have to stop running altogether and face whatever waited for us head-on. We stayed hidden behind the storage tanks for the better part of an hour, waiting for the ship's core to stabilize enough for its systems to come back fully online. Velthara sat cross-legged near the console, eyes closed, hands resting on her knees, breathing slow and even, as if she were somewhere else entirely. Is she meditating? Nathan whispered to me. I think she's healing, I whispered back, though honestly, I wasn't sure. Everything about her existence broke the rules I understood about how bodies worked, how people recovered, how strength functioned. When she finally opened her eyes, some of the exhaustion had faded from her face, replaced by something sharper, more focused. The core has stabilized enough for short-range travel, she said, but it is still far from fully repaired. If we intend to leave this planet, or to return to my homeworld, we will need considerably more time and resources than we currently have. Return to your homeworld, I repeated. Wait, that's the plan now? Going back to the place that's actively trying to kill you? It is the only place where this can truly end, she said. Hiding here delays the inevitable. Eventually, they will locate this planet's coordinates within their tracking systems, and then this entire world becomes a target, not just myself. I cannot allow that risk to remain on your account. The weight of that settled over all three of us. This wasn't just about her safety anymore. It was about mine, about Nathan's, about everyone walking around this city with no idea how close their ordinary lives had come to being caught in something enormous. Okay, I said slowly. So how do we get you back, and how do we make sure you actually survive once you're there? Velthara hesitated, something flickering behind her eyes that looked almost like fear, though she quickly masked it. There is a fragment of memory returning to me, she said. From before the crash, I remember fleeing my own council chamber, remember the moment my closest advisor looked at me not with concern, but with cold satisfaction, as though everything unfolding was exactly what he had hoped for. Your advisor, I said. You think he's behind this? I believe so. His name is Korin Das. He has served my family's throne for decades, always pushing for stricter control, always warning against what he called dangerous softness in leadership. When I chose mercy over execution for that prisoner, I believe he saw his opportunity. So this whole hunt, the soldiers, the attack on the palace, that was him? I cannot be certain of every detail yet, but the pattern fits. If I return without proof, without a way to expose him publicly, I walk directly into his design. He would simply have me eliminated the moment I set foot back on the homeworld and claim it was necessary for the Empire's stability. Nathan let out a low whistle. So basically, we need evidence against a guy who probably already covered his tracks perfectly, using alien politics none of us understand, on a planet none of us have ever seen. When you say it that way, I muttered, it sounds significantly worse. Velthara managed something close to a tired smile. Fortunately, Korin Das is a man of pride, and pride often leaves traces that pure calculation would avoid. If my memory serves correctly, my personal command codes remain active within the palace systems, codes only I possess. If I can access them upon return, I may be able to retrieve communication logs proving his involvement before he anticipates my arrival. And if he anticipates it anyway, then I likely do not survive the attempt, she said simply, without drama, without self-pity, just quiet acceptance of the risk. Something tightened in my chest, hearing her say that so plainly. A few hours ago, she was a stranger bleeding on my bed. Now the thought of her walking into near-certain danger sat heavy and wrong inside me. "There has to be another way," I said. "There may not be," she replied gently, "but I do not intend to face it recklessly. With enough time to repair my ship fully, and with careful planning, the odds shift in my favor, even if only slightly." We spent the next several hours working in careful, quiet bursts, moving the ship gradually toward an abandoned facility on the edge of the city where Nathan knew the security systems had been shut down for years. It gave us cover to work more openly, hidden from the streets, while Velthara guided both of us through repairing deeper systems within her ship. It was strange, watching my hands that knew engines and alternators and stubborn old trucks, slowly begin to understand alien machinery under her patient instruction. She never spoke to me like I was slow or beneath her, even though the technology belonged to a civilization thousands of years beyond mine. She explained things clearly, adjusted when I misunderstood, and more than once looked genuinely impressed when I solved a problem faster than she expected. "You learn quickly," she said at one point, watching me correctly realign a damaged conduit on my second attempt. "Fixing things is fixing things," I said, echoing what I'd told myself earlier. "Doesn't matter where the parts came from." She studied me for a long moment then, something unreadable in her expression. "Where I come from, intelligence is measured by how quickly someone masters existing systems perfectly. But you do something different. You adapt around imperfection instead of demanding perfection from the start. I find that remarkable." I felt heat rise in my face, unsure how to respond to something that felt suspiciously like a compliment wrapped inside an alien philosophy lesson. As the hours passed, the ship's systems slowly hummed back toward full function, lights steadying, the earlier dim flicker replaced by a stable, confident glow. Velthara moved with more strength now too, her earlier exhaustion fading, replaced by something sharper, more like the ruler she must have once been before crashing into my world. But as preparations neared completion, I noticed something else settling over her, something quieter, heavier. "You're scared," I said, catching her alone near the ship's console during a brief pause. She didn't deny it, which somehow surprised me more than if she had. "I am not afraid of facing Koran Das," she said quietly. "I am not even afraid of dying. Not truly. I have accepted that risk since the moment I chose mercy over cruelty." "Then what is it?" She turned to face me fully, her violet eyes searching mine with something raw and unguarded, something I hadn't seen from her since that first terrified moment on my bed. "I am afraid of ruling wrongly," she admitted. "My entire life, I was taught that emotion clouds judgment, that compassion invites disaster. Then I met you, met your friend, watched two strangers risk everything without hesitation, without calculation, simply because it felt right to help. It has made me question everything I once believed about leadership. And that scares you? If compassion is not weakness," she said slowly, "then perhaps my entire understanding of strength has been wrong my whole life. And if I return home uncertain of what kind of ruler I should be, I fear I may fail my people in a far worse way than Koran Das ever could." I stepped closer, unsure exactly what pulled me forward, some instinct stronger than caution. "For what it's worth," I said quietly, "I think a leader who's afraid of ruling wrong, afraid of hurting people, is exactly the kind of leader worth following. The dangerous ones are the ones who never doubt themselves at all." She looked at me for a long moment, something shifting behind her eyes, softening in a way that felt entirely different from the calculating ruler who had first grabbed my arm in the middle of the night. "You continue to surprise me, Daniel Hart," she said softly. "Right back at you, Empress." The corner of her mouth curved upward slightly, the closest thing to a genuine smile I had seen from her yet. For a brief moment, standing in the dim glow of her repaired ship, surrounded by danger on every side, none of that seemed to matter quite as much. Then, gently, she leaned forward and pressed her lips against mine, brief, uncertain, like she wasn't entirely sure of the gesture herself, yet unwilling to leave without trying it at least once. When she pulled back, her cheeks carried a faint violet flush I hadn't noticed on her before. "I do not know if either of us survives what comes next," she said quietly. "Then let's make sure we do," I said. Nathan's voice broke the moment from across the ship, equal parts urgent and awkward. "Hate to interrupt whatever this is, but the ship's fully powered now, and also, I think I just saw one of those hunting crafts pass overhead again." Velthara's expression shifted instantly back to sharp focus, the ruler resurfacing beneath the softness of a moment ago. "Then it is time," she said. "We leave for my homeworld now, before they locate us again." I looked at Nathan, then at the ship's glowing controls, then finally at Velthara, standing tall, despite everything stacked against her. "Let's go save your empire," I said. She reached out and took my hand, her grip steady despite everything, and together, the three of us stepped fully into whatever waited for us among the stars. The jump through space happened faster than I expected, a brief pull of pressure against my chest, a flash of colors I had no words for, and then, suddenly, stillness. Through the viewport, a world unlike anything I had ever imagined stretched out before us. Towers of crystal and metal, rising from oceans of deep violet, cities glowing faintly beneath a sky streaked with rings of pale light. "Welcome," Velthara said quietly, "to my home." Nathan pressed his face against the viewport like a kid seeing snow for the first time. "This is either the most beautiful thing I have ever seen, or we are about to die somewhere incredibly aesthetic." "Possibly both," Velthara replied, without a trace of humor, which somehow made it funnier. We descended carefully, avoiding the main capital where Corin Das would certainly have eyes watching every arrival, and instead landed at a smaller outpost near the outer districts, a place Velthara claimed still held loyalty to her bloodline, even amid the chaos of her disappearance. The moment we stepped off the ship, guards approached, weapons raised, faces tense. Then recognition swept across them, followed swiftly by shock, and then, carefully, by lowered weapons and dropped gazes. "Empress," one of them said, voice trembling slightly. "We believed you had perished." "Not yet," Velthara said firmly. "And I do not intend to, not while Corin Das still sits comfortably believing his plan succeeded." Word spread quickly through the outpost, hushed whispers, disbelieving stares, soldiers and workers alike watching as their supposedly dead ruler moved among them once more, flanked by two strange, unfamiliar humans from a world most of them had never even heard mentioned before. "We do not have much time," Velthara said, moving swiftly through the outpost's corridors, us trailing close behind. "Corin Das will have informants everywhere. Once he learns I have returned, he will act quickly to silence me permanently, likely framing it as a necessary act to preserve order." "So what's the plan?" I asked. "We just walk into the palace and demand the truth?" "Not quite," she said. "First, we retrieve the proof." She led us to a hidden terminal deep within the outpost, one connected discreetly to the capital's central archive network. Her fingers moved swiftly across glowing symbols, entering commands only she would know, her personal command code still miraculously active despite everything. "There," she whispered after several tense minutes, as data streams filled the screen before her. Communication logs between Corin Das and the Silent Council, dated before the attack on my chambers. He orchestrated everything, down to the exact timing of my ship's sabotage. "Can you broadcast that?" Nathan asked. "To everyone?" "I can," she said slowly, "but doing so exposes our location instantly. The moment this reaches public channels, Corin Das will know precisely where to send his forces." "Then we make sure we're not here when they arrive," I said. She looked at me, something firm settling into her expression, the uncertain woman from earlier, fully replaced now by the Empress she had once been, though perhaps changed, softened, deepened by everything she had experienced on Earth. "There is a public forum planned within the hour," she said. "A gathering meant to formally announce my death and confirm Corin Das as regent. If I appear there myself, broadcasting this proof directly to everyone present, there will be no opportunity for him to suppress the truth quietly." "That sounds like walking directly into a trap," Nathan said. "It is," Velthara agreed, "but it is also the only trap where the truth becomes impossible to hide, regardless of what happens to me afterward." I felt my stomach twist at the thought of her walking straight into danger like that, deliberately, knowingly. "There has to be another way." "Sometimes," she said gently, "the only way forward requires walking directly through the danger, rather than around it." Despite everything inside me screaming against it, I understood. This wasn't about recklessness. It was about ending things properly, decisively, in a way that protected not just her, but everyone across her empire who deserved a ruler willing to risk everything for the truth. "Then I'm coming with you," I said. "Daniel, this is not your fight." "It became my fight the moment you fell through my window," I said. "Besides, you once told me your people never account for unpredictability. Let's give them exactly that." She studied me for a long moment, something warm flickering behind her violet eyes, before finally nodding. The public forum stood at the heart of the capital, an enormous open plaza surrounded by towering crystal structures. Thousands of citizens gathered beneath rings of soft artificial light. At the center of a raised platform stood Corin Das, tall, composed, addressing the crowd with practiced calm, his voice amplified across the entire square. "And so, in this time of mourning, we must remain unified, steady, unclouded by grief," he was saying, when suddenly, movement rippled through the crowd near the platform's edge. Velthara stepped forward, flanked by myself and Nathan, her presence alone silencing the entire square within seconds. Every eye turned toward her, disbelief rippling outward in waves across the crowd. Corin Das's composed expression cracked for just a moment, a flicker of genuine shock crossing his face, before he quickly masked it behind forced relief. "Empress," he said smoothly, "you live. We feared the worst." "I imagine you did," Velthara said, her voice calm, controlled, cutting cleanly across the silent plaza, "though I suspect your fear was less about my survival and more about being discovered." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Corin Das's eyes narrowed slightly, calculating quickly. "I do not understand your meaning," he said carefully. Without another word, Velthara activated the small device she carried, projecting the recovered communication logs directly onto massive display screens surrounding the plaza, visible to everyone gathered. Voices, unmistakably his, discussing sabotage, discussing timing, discussing the necessity of eliminating an Empress deemed too soft to rule effectively. Gasps spread through the crowd like wildfire. Corin Das's composure shattered entirely now, his eyes darting toward the exits, calculating escape routes that no longer existed. "This proves nothing," he shouted, though his voice cracked slightly under the weight of thousands of witnessing eyes. "Fabricated evidence, designed to manipulate public sentiment." "Then explain the timestamp," Velthara said calmly, "matching precisely with the sabotage of my ship, recorded independently by the very vessel you attempted to destroy." Silence fell across the plaza, heavy and absolute. Corin Das looked around at the faces surrounding him, soldiers, citizens, advisors, all staring back with dawning realization and quiet fury. "You were willing to condemn an entire empire to cruelty," Velthara continued, her voice steady, "because you feared a ruler capable of compassion. But compassion is not weakness, Corin Das. I learned that lesson not from my own people, but from strangers on a distant world who owed me nothing, yet gave everything anyway." She turned slightly, gesturing toward Nathan and myself, standing quietly beside her. "These two men risked their lives repeatedly, without hesitation, without personal gain, simply because it was right to do so. If that is weakness, then I welcome it gladly, for it saved not only my life, but perhaps the future of everyone standing here today. The plaza remained silent for a long moment, before finally, slowly, soldiers surrounding Corin Das stepped forward, no longer hesitant, no longer confused, moving to take him into custody under the weight of overwhelming evidence and public witness. As chaos settled into order around us, Velthara turned toward me, exhaustion and relief mixing openly across her face for the first time since I had met her. "It is done," she said quietly. "You did it," I said. "We did it," she corrected gently. In the days that followed, the empire slowly began adjusting to a ruler unlike any it had known before, one who valued strength through compassion rather than cold calculation, one whose reforms, though controversial among older advisors, began slowly reshaping how her people treated one another. Nathan, somehow, became something of a minor celebrity among the palace staff, endlessly recounting our adventure to anyone willing to listen, embellishing details with each retelling until our story sounded far more heroic than it had actually felt in the moment. As for me, Velthara offered me a choice one quiet evening, standing together beneath the strange rings of light stretching across her homeworld's night sky. "You could return home," she said softly, "live the ordinary life you once knew, free from all of this. Or you could remain here, beside me, as I attempt to reshape an empire built on centuries of cold tradition. It would not be easy, it would not be simple. It would ask everything of you, the same way it has already asked everything since the night you found me bleeding in your bed." I thought about my old life, the garage, the quiet apartment, the small, comfortable routine I had followed for years without question. Then I thought about everything since that night, the fear, the danger, but also something else entirely, a sense of purpose I had never known I was missing. "Empires rise and empires fall," I said finally, taking her hand in mine. "But what we found in that one impossible night, that's worth defending, no matter how many stars stand between here and home." She smiled then, fully, warmly, unguarded in a way I hadn't seen from her before, and together we stood beneath an alien sky, ready to face whatever came next, not as Empress and stranger, but as two people who had chosen each other completely, against every rule either of our worlds had ever taught us to believe.